Hi, everyone. This is a Know Your Rights panel with the Immigrant Justice Project team here at CAIR Washington. Today, we're specifically talking about newly arrived Afghans in Washington State who are either seeking legal counsel or are working with an attorney on a case. I'm Angelique Rodriguez, and I'm the policy assistant at CAIR Washington. And for context, CAIR Washington is a civil rights and advocacy organization serving Muslim individuals, families, and communities in Washington state. This Know Your Rights panel presentation is a part of our Immigrant Justice Project. CAIR Washington's Immigrant Justice Project team is focused on providing legal representation for newly arrived Afghans in Washington state. So today I'm here with the Immigrant Justice Project team, and I will now turn it over for introductions.
Hi, my name is Hannah Vickner-Howe. I'm one of the Immigrant Justice Project attorneys, and we are providing direct legal representation to newly arrived Afghans before USCIS and the Department of State.
Hi, I'm Alex Barron. I'm another one of the Immigrant Justice Project attorneys. As Hannah said, those are the services we're offering, and I'll turn it over to the next team member.
Hi, my name is Anessa Navasio, and I'm also an attorney with the IJP, and happy to be with you today.
Hi, my name is Shirinaka Mustafa Zada. I am working as a legal assistant with IGP teams. Thank you.
Thank you all for those introductions. We'll just dive right in. So starting with our first question, I'm going to ask Shirin. So Shirin, what are the roles of the attorney and client in a legal representation relationship?
He might be a bit frozen, so I'll take that one, Angelique, if that's okay.
For sure.
When working with a lawyer, the client, if you're bringing a case and working with legal representation, you are the expert on your own story and all the details of your situation. And so that's the information that you want to bring to the relationship. And the attorney or the representative is the expert on the system and the process that you'll have to walk through. And so it is the representative's job, the lawyer's job, to translate your facts and your documents and your situation into the format that best fits the system that you're going to be processing on. The lawyers will take the relevant US law and bring the client's story in a way that it fits the circumstance and the situation. We, as a lawyer, we want to walk alongside the client through the process. We may have some suggestions about what the best direction is, but the client ultimately gets to make the choices about what's the best situation for themselves and for their family.
Thank you, Hannah. That was really helpful. Hopefully we get Shirin back in a second. But for now, we'll go on to our next question. Alex, so you have the second question, and it's a bit of a long question. And it has to do with capacity issues and the crunch time for newly arrived Afghans to adjust status without losing their status currently. So the question is, with the need for immigration services outpacing the capacity of legal service providers, organizations, etc., providing direct legal assistance to individuals who can't pay a private attorney, combined with the crunch time for newly arrived Afghans to file for a more permanent status, given that we are coming up on that 2-year deadline for many with humanitarian parole, what sort of advice would you give newly arrived Afghans who are trying to find legal representation?
Well, it is important to remember that the organizations that are offering legal services have limited resources and most likely cannot meet all the need that's out there. You are not the only one looking for legal representation. You're not the only one in the queue, unfortunately. And so you're going to have to try your best to identify all the organizations that are doing this kind of work, and be persistent about contacting all of them, and following up as well. You probably want to remember who you talk to within each organization or agency, and remember exactly what they said. And it's also a good idea to ask for an expectation about the timeline. So, for example, when can I expect to hear from you about whether you're going to take my case? Or if someone has taken your case, when can we expect to be filing the case? What are you waiting for from me? And follow up on those deadlines. And as I said, be persistent, find out all the organizations that are out there. Try your best to inform yourself of your own timelines. At what point it's going to be too late for you to take any kind of legal action. And then as well, it's going to be a good idea to take yourself off of any other waiting list that you're still on after you found representation, so that those resources can be freed up for other people who need them. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. So now that we've kind of talked about finding legal representation, I think it's important that we also talk about what are the different kinds of legal representation. So this next question is for Nessa, and it's basically, what are the different kinds of legal representation?
Thank you. So I think this is directed at people who are probably looking for a pro bono attorney, meaning an attorney that you don't have to pay for services. Even if you do get a pro bono attorney, you may still need to pay for filing fees and costs associated with your case. And of course, not everyone who needs a pro bono attorney is going to be able to find one. So there are some other options if you're unable to find a pro bono attorney that you might want to consider exploring. And one of those is low bono, meaning attorneys and organizations who charge something that's less than market rate. It might be sliding scale according to your household income. So that can be a way to get your needs met with something you can afford. Of course, there's full representation through a paid attorney at normal market rates. And many attorneys in immigration do charge flat rates versus hourly. It might be possible to get a payment plan. That's another way that may make a regular market rate attorney more accessible to you. So you can ask private attorneys about those kinds of options. So another option that's also under paid representation would be limited scope, meaning that the attorney is only handling a portion of your case and the client is most likely representing themselves at most of the stages or all of the stages of their case. So one example of that is you pay an attorney just to look over your application, make sure that you have all of the right evidence and you filled out the form accurately. Another example is you just have an attorney accompany you to your immigration interview. So those are other ways to keep the cost down, but still have someone advising you. And that's compared with full representation where the attorney is helping prepare your filing, preparing you for your interview and actually attending the interview with you. So that's full representation. And then many people wind up having to represent themselves. That's also referred to as pro se or self-represented, and that means that you are going through the process on your own without an attorney. However, there are some resources. There's lots of resources out there for pro se applicants, online resources. There's legal clinics where pro se individuals can go get maybe a half an hour of legal advice. There's also a lot of workshops and kind of do-it-yourself packets that guide you through step by step with instructions on how to file your case. And those are kind of more general, so it's not going to be as helpful for if you have specific issues, and that may be a time to go to a legal clinic and ask some questions or pay for a consultation from a private attorney or seek some sort of limited scope representation. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that in the immigration context, there are people called accredited representatives that are not attorneys, but they are authorized and totally capable of helping individuals file their immigration case and can represent people often at either no charge. They may be working with some sort of nonprofit community organization, or they may be offering reduced fees. I think that wraps up that question.
Thank you, Anessa. That was really helpful. So, and there's like a lot there, so a lot to think about. So thank you. So now that we kind of have an understanding of the different kinds of representation, my next question is for Hannah. And the question is, what can clients do once they find a legal provider?
So one of the first things that I would suggest to do is figure out what type of representation that the legal provider is offering. So whether that's a private attorney, whether that's pro bono representation, whether you're working with an organization, it's important that you know what type of service that they're providing to you. So going back to Anessa's answer, is that limited representation? They're only helping you with one application. Does the service they're providing include attending your interview with you? Make sure that you kind of know what is what's included in the type of relationship. It is not great practice to have multiple organizations or multiple attorneys working on different types of applications for you. The reason for that is because immigration is a process, right? One step kind of moves into the next step. And if you're working with different organizations, there's things that could get lost in the whole process of your immigration application. So going back to my first response, when you find out what type of service they're going to provide to you, you can ask the questions of, does it include the next step in the representation? And can I file these additional applications as well? When you start to work with a legal representative, it's also really important that you turn in all of the necessary information as soon as you can in a timely manner. Especially as Alex had mentioned before, if there's a timeline of when you want to have your application filed, it's helpful if you're turning in all the materials in advance so that doesn't kind of slow up what can be produced for your case. This has been mentioned a couple times already, but understand what are the next steps, right? Once we file this application, what happens next? Not just in the processing of that application, but in your whole immigration journey. It's important, and you have a right to know the information about your case. When working with a legal representative, they have pieces of information that you need, but they're not going to have all the information about your individual circumstances. So it's really important that you provide that to the lawyer or the representative that you're working with so they can give you the full picture. it is important to get copies of any of the filings that are made on your behalf, and any of the retainer agreements or the contracts that you sign with the legal representative. If at any time you do change locations, you do work with a new law firm, it would be important to have copies of all of those documents. And then I think Alex had mentioned this above, get a clear understanding of what the expectations are, right? Okay, we are starting to work together on my immigration case. When do you think that, how long will it take for this to be filed, right? And do you what are the processing times right now? Always, this is an estimation on the basis of, what other work is happening with the legal representative and how the government processes cases. But it's helpful information to know what the expectation might be around timeframe expectations.
Thank you, Hannah. So that kind of also leads us into our next question, because you mentioned retainer agreement. So my next question is for Alex. What is a retainer agreement and why is it important?
Yes, a retainer agreement is the contract regarding the work that is being done on your behalf by your lawyer. So it's a written document. It specifically covers the kind of legal work or describes the legal work that's being done for you. It identifies who is doing the work for you, which should be either your attorney or the organization that's providing you representation, the company. It will provide some terms of service. So, for example, the obligations that you have to your attorney in terms of providing documents, providing accurate information, the obligations that your attorney has to you in terms of, the tasks, the representation tasks, and meeting deadlines and all that. It may identify, it may describe a period, or it may describe when the representation would come to an end, perhaps not as a point in time specifically, but in terms of when the task is completed that is being described in the agreement. So the important thing to know, and this has been mentioned already, is that you don't have a lawyer, you're not guaranteed representation by a lawyer until that agreement exists, until that document has been produced and signed. So, you have to keep that in mind, because you may be having lots of meetings with people. You may have consultations with different lawyers or different organizations where they tell you, they go through your rights, they go through your legal options. That does not necessarily mean that that person is your lawyer, or that that person has a duty to represent you in any kind of legal proceeding. You don't have that guarantee until you have the retainer agreement. So as Hannah mentioned, make sure that you have a copy of that agreement with you. And yeah, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So we've kind of talked about trying to find legal representation, what kinds of legal representation there are, why retainer agreements are important. So my next question is, once you find representation, so what kinds of practices and actions can clients take to make the filing process go as smoothly as possible? And Anessa, can you answer this question for us?
So from the beginning, it's really important that you can communicate with your attorney and their team, which they may or may not have a paralegal or legal assistant who will also be in touch with you about your case. So that means letting them know, do you need an interpreter? What is your preferred way to communicate and meet? Often now it's more common to meet on Zoom or by phone. Sometimes it's necessary to meet in person, or it's preferable. So let your attorney know how you prefer to communicate. Let them know if your contact information changes. It's critical that we be able to get in touch with you, because Sometimes unexpected deadlines may arise, and it's really critical that we can get in touch with you as soon as possible. And it goes both ways, really. Also, make sure that you have all of your documents organized in a secure location, especially your identity documents, copies of any correspondence and anything you filed with immigration relating to your case. You might have already filed something, or some other organization may have already filed something. It's critical for your attorney to know that and have copies of those documents. There may be other evidence that your attorney needs to help prove your case. So that could be things like medical records or employment records, and getting to those documents to your legal representative in a timely manner is important. And then also, your legal representative should provide you copies of anything that's filed on your behalf, and receipts, proof of any payments you make, your retainer agreement, and you have a right to those documents. So if they're not provided, you can ask for those things. And then finally, asking any questions that you have. It can be helpful to keep notes for yourself and for your attorney, so that you can discuss everything that you have questions about when you meet. And just being responsive to your attorney and their team.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was helpful. And we could probably spend like all day like talking about this. But so next question I have is, so it's for Sharon, because we have him back. You're back, Sharon. So the next question is for you. What if a client has language barriers, and how should they navigate this when filing a case?
Again, sorry for the disconnection. Yes, if a client have a difficulty communicating with his attorney due to language barriers, or his English, he doesn't know English language, he should tell her attorney or his attorney that he needed an interpreter. It would be best if he asks a question, and if he needs clarification, he have to ask and know. For example, he should make sure that what is happening on his case, defining his goal, and telling the whole story. That will be very helpful. And make sure that everything is being read to the client, and he should know from each piece of his case. If he or she can read in his own language, make sure that the attorney or the organizations provides the retainer agreement in his or her native language. And always he should be in touch, in contact, and provide the appropriate information to his or her attorney in order that his case is going smooth. You know?
Thank you, Sharon. That is very good to know. So thank you for that. Moving on to our next question. This next question is for Hannah. What can clients expect if their case requires them to do an interview?
So there are quite a few types of immigration cases that will require an interview in front of the government, and your representative can set that expectation with you in advance, so you know that it's coming. A big piece of immigration law is the truthfulness of your story and the consistency with which you tell it. So there's definitely parts of the story that can be, especially if it was a traumatic event, that can be hard to remember, difficult details that maybe you don't like to speak about out loud. And that's okay to let your lawyer know that this is a challenging thing to talk about. Your lawyer can help you prepare your statement and prepare your story in a way that hits the appropriate things that you need to inform the government about, but can also, avoids unnecessary details that may be harmful or painful for you or for your family. Especially for cases and for interviews where there was a traumatic event that happened, such as asylum claims that you have to speak about it, having somebody besides your legal counsel that can support you in that is also really helpful. The lawyers are working with your story and working with your facts to make sure it meets the legal elements. But we also do recognize that you need support from other areas of your life and your community. So seeking mental health services or some other type of community support as you're kind of walking through. The lawyers and the legal representatives will ask the questions that best fit the legal case, but if there are details that you remember that you think might be important, it's helpful to mention those. The representatives don't always know the right questions to ask, and again, you are the expert of your own story. So bringing those things in, if you feel comfortable speaking about them with your lawyer, can be important for your immigration case. Preparing for an interview and writing a legal case, especially that deal with individual circumstances, may take more than one meeting. It may be going over details over a period of time, a chronology of time, and specifics around certain circumstances and what happened as well. Sometimes I will ask clients specific questions that also may or may not be relevant to the case, but we also say that if it's information that we don't know, we can't help prepare it for immigration. So it's a little bit more important to share the information, even if you don't think it's relevant, because your lawyer can't help you with it if they don't know what it is.
Thank you, Hannah. Yes, that is really good to know. And I guess tying into our next question, and Sharon, this is for you, is what should a client do if their circumstances change?
So changes may affect on his or her cases. So it is very important to keep his or her attorney updated on these changes so that they can adopt it if necessary. Otherwise, it may take the process of the legal process longer. And so all the time, so we are advising to our clients if there is any changes on their addresses, cell phone number, or any other changes, they have to have updated his attorney in order that he or she adopted his case to running or to go smoothly.
Thank you. Yes, that ties very much into what Hannah was saying. Like good communication, attorneys cannot help you with what they do not know about. So thank you. So this last question is for everyone. And the question is, are there any other big takeaways that the Immigrant Justice Project team here at CAIR Washington wants potential clients to take away from this?
I wanted to make a couple of quick points, continuing to build off of the last point that Hannah made and that Shirin followed up on about how lawyers need to know all of the information to be able to prepare. And I just want to make sure that people are aware that the officer who may adjudicate your case or who may interview you is not necessarily on your side and may not give you the benefit of the doubt, and that there are aspects of immigration law that may make your case more complicated, even based on the facts of your life. I'm sorry if this is a little bit vague, but this is my point is that you need to be very specific and informative as much as you can with your lawyer about the things you've been through, especially in cases like asylum or special immigrant visa, because these types of cases are very dependent on the specific facts. And those facts also need to be presented in a specific way, because you can end up facing challenges from the officer that your lawyer only your lawyer can maybe talk to you about and get you through. And just one other quick point about that, you also should not assume that the immigration officer knows everything about the country and the situation that you're coming from. We have a lot of this happens a lot, especially with, for example, the Afghan community. It's a lot of these issues have been in the global news. The U.S. government has been very involved in events there, and so there is sometimes the feeling that, well, you know what's going on there, so you can understand my story. But that's not usually how immigration officers will look at it. Immigration officers will not assume anything necessarily unless you explain in detail, this is what happened in my country, and this is how it affected me. And oftentimes you have to provide some evidence, some documentary evidence to explain or support that. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else have something to add?
I just may want to follow up. Part of what we've all been hitting on in answers to these questions is that it's really important that you're an active participant in your own case with your legal counsel. The lawyers and the representatives can help direct you to the best choice that you need to make, can inform you about what type of information and materials that you need to turn in, but ultimately it is your case. You need to have an understanding of what's happening on your behalf. The lawyers are not there just to fill out paperwork for you. They're there to walk with you through the immigration process. So the more that you can understand and ask questions about your case, the more that you can participate with information, the easier it will be to work with your legal counsel and to get to the outcome that you best want to see.
Yeah, also I would like to add that our clients should know that when they refer to CAIR Washington or we did the intakes, they anticipate and they expecting that your case should be processed as soon as possible. But you should know that our attorneys have many cases, so they will working on each case is by turn. So I request from all our readers and our clients, they should respect the timeline and be cooperative whenever their turns come up. They should, show up, and otherwise they should not bothering our attorneys in order to waste their times and our attorneys. Next.
And Nessa, do you have any other thoughts?
Just that occasionally, we might miss something. So if you think that's the case, let us know. And if you haven't heard back in a long time, check in with us. We're all doing our best to manage our caseloads, and sometimes things can get missed. So it may be good to follow up if you haven't heard anything in a while.
Then I think with that, thank you all for your time. Just a closing remark is that filing a case and navigating a search for legal representation is by no means easy. And so we just hope that here at this panel with these questions from our Immigrant Justice Project team, that it kind of helps demystify this process, and it makes it a little bit more clear. So yeah, I think with that, I think we will close out, and thank you, Immigrant Justice Project team, for your time.